There must be a political revolution in Washington. The only person that can really lead that revolution is Bernie Sanders. He's been talking about the same things over and over and over again, close to over half a century, while everyone else has just now come around to his political ideology. What a revolution will look like is the President of the United States continuing this massive movement, not a movement in Washington, or not just trying to work the levers of Washington and try to work with the Democratic establishment or the Republicans, but someone who is truly going to be in every single state, mobilizing every single voter, keeping the masses of attention on policy and the agenda in which the people want to see passed. A true populist understands what it takes to get this done, and Bernie Sanders is a real populist. Bernie Sanders has always been an advocate for Medicare for all. He's always been an advocate for LGBT equality. He's always been an advocate for civil rights and women's rights. Bernie Sanders was one of the first mayors to come out for LGBT equality in the 1980s during Ronald Reagan. So that should tell you a lot about his politics. While Barack Obama and Joe Biden were having trouble coming around to LGBT equality, even though they're the ones who got it done ultimately, I will give the Obama administration credit for that by nominating Supreme Court justices who believe in that. But at the same time, it took them a minute to come around to that very fact, to that very reality, while Bernie Sanders was advocating for it and pushing for it in the 1980s, the early 80s. There's an effort right now by the mainstream media to try to silence Bernie Sanders and to try to paint their own narrative of how this election is going. They're telling you that Bernie Sanders is not making any headways, that he's not gaining any traction in the polls or anything like that. Bernie Sanders has the most volunteers throughout the whole entire country. He has a volunteer in every single district of the United States. And most of his volunteers are in districts in which were swing districts that went from Obama to Trump. He has 1 million volunteers nationwide. And he has the most donations, the most small dollar donations from individuals in the whole entire country. They want Elizabeth Warren to do well. And you have to understand that there's a reason for that. Elizabeth Warren will indirectly keep the system the same. She doesn't know how to, quite frankly, push policy or legislation the same way that Bernie Sanders would, because Bernie Sanders understands this is not simply about just trying to legislate. There's more to governing than just trying to legislate in the walls of Congress and in Washington, D.C. You have to actually come outside of that Oval Office and actually mobilize the voters. Actually get up and do something about what you're saying. Bernie Sanders has the numbers. He has the massive numbers to prove that he's the only person that can really do this. He's already had the biggest rallies of this whole entire campaign season already. When AOC came out to endorse him in Queens, over 26,000 people showed up to see him. 26,000, and over 4,000 more people waited while they couldn't make it inside the venue. And in Council Bluffs, Iowa, a couple of days ago, he had the biggest rally there in election history. Bernie Sanders understands the people, and the people are with him because he's a populist. And populism is the way to go. Donald Trump painted himself as a populist, but he's not a real populist. He just took advantage of the fact that working class people have been undermined by administrations, Republican and Democrat, because there's a special interest and a higher power above that they're trying to protect. People like Bernie get it. He understands that you can't just live from paycheck to paycheck and honestly have like a sustainable life, which is why he wants to guarantee everyone a job, and he believes in some type of implementation of a universal basic income. This is why Bernie Sanders believes in the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal entails universal basic income and a federal jobs guarantee and many other things such as a $15 minimum wage and things like that that can really shift the economy and start the redistribution of wealth process. And that's how we're going to honestly start to close the raging wealth disparity, I should say, in America. So at the end of the day, we need a progressive populist. A progressive populist, someone who wants to take money out of politics and someone who wants to reform the whole entire political spectrum and, quite frankly, the whole entire federal government, because that's what it will take to truly make the system right and right for the people. And once again, the people are with Bernie Sanders because he's a progressive populist. Elizabeth Warren is trying to paint herself in the same light, but the problem is she's only gaining steam and traction with upper class liberal white voters, while Bernie Sanders, his biggest coalition diverse, and it's people of color, and particularly young people of color, and which is why he'll win the election.